mes pradedam. Dabar mūsų pranešėjas yra istorikas iš Varšuvos, Melchioras Jakubowskis. Aš jį trumpai pristatysiu lietuviškai, po to angliškai. So we have our presenter today from Warsaw, historian Melchior Jakubowski, and I will present briefly now in Lithuanian and then in English. Taigi, Melchioras Jakubowskis, jisai baigė magistro studijas 2015 metais, istorijos magistro studijas Varšuvos universitete, o 2020 metais jisai gavo daktaro laipsnį, taip pat Varšuvos universitete, ir jis rašė iš tiesų tema, kuri bus šiandieną prezentacija, tai apie religinį ir etninį kraštovaizdį, būtent Bukovinoj, Latgalėj ir Suvalkų regione 18 amžiaus sandūroje, rašė apie valstybę ir bažnytinės institucijas ir jų santykius su vietiniam bendruomenėm. Ir ši jo disertacija buvo remiama Lenkijos mokslo ir švietimo ministerijos, buvo dalis deimantinės programos. Ir Melchioras Jakubowskis yra išleidęs nemažai publikacijų ir kalba taip pat lenkų, vokiečių, anglų ir rusų kalbomis. So now I will present briefly in English. So Melchior Jakubowski, in 2015 he received a master degree in history at the University of Warsaw. In 2020 he was awarded his doctoral degree in history as well at the University of Warsaw, and the topic of his thesis was religious and ethnic landscape of Bukovina, Latgale and the Suvalkų region at the turn of the 18th century, state and church institutions facing the local communities. And as I said, this research was funded by the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of the Republic of Poland, and it was also within the Diamond Grant program. Jakubowski also published several publications, more than several publications on the topic. The newest one is, for instance, Facing the Old Believers, the Experience of Austrian-Prussian Officials in Bukovina and Neu-Ostpreußen. And Jakubowski speaks, of course, Polish, English, German, and Russian. So I give you the word, perduodu žodį, so you can start.
Ačiū labai, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I apologize that this presentation will be not in Lithuanian, but in English. And I also have to admit that I made little changes to the original paper, so I'll try to keep to the original paper to make it possible for you to read the translation into Lithuanian. But there will be some changes. I corrected some mistakes or filled some gaps, so there will be some changes. I already warned you about this. And going straight to the topic. Will it work? Once again.
Wait, it's got stuck again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we start. Jeleniavo, today with a population of about 600 people, center of the rural commune, located 12 kilometers north to Suvalki. And here you can see it on a map of the governorate of Suvalki, so the historical 19th century Suvalki region. Jeleniavo originated in the second half of the 18th century, together with most villages in the proximity. What is important, from their beginnings, these settlements were inhabited by people of various religious and ethnic backgrounds. And therefore, Jeleniavo and its environs provide an excellent case for studying the development of interconfessional relations exactly from the beginning of this community. In the early modern period, this area belonged to the royal domain of the Polish-Lithuanian kings as a part of the Grodno economy. And here you can see the area of Jeleniavo on a map of Grodno economy from 1781. Notice where is north on this map. That's quite an important thing. Until the second half of the 18th century, this territory was covered by forests. Only during the reign of the last king of Poland-Lithuania, Stanisław August Poniatowski, a significant part of the forests was cut off and colonized in an action initiated by the Lithuanian treasurer and manager of the economies, Antoni Tyzenhauz. Jeleniavo, which on this map is here, was established as one of the local market towns in the economy. The date of its establishment remains unknown. It was probably in the 1760s. There are various dates for the beginning of the Catholic parish, 1767, 72 or 73. The preserved metrical book starts from 1772, so that is a firm date. The settlement never received the Charter of Magdeburg law. However, from 1785 onwards, it was called a town, so in Polish language sources, miasteczko. Then we can go to the Prussian period, so the map made just after the seizure by Prussia. In 1794, a significant part of the town was devastated by fire, and throughout the subsequent years, the inhabitants were seeking to receive the subsidies for reconstruction from the Prussian authorities. However, in 1800, the government deprived Jeleniavo of urban status because of its little importance and slow development. Despite this decision, the settlement preserved an urban layout with a central market square that is visible here, and the typical social structure already presented in the previous paper with predominance of Jewish artisans and shopkeepers. On this map, except for the market square, we can also see the church and a synagogue here. And now looking a bit farther to the area around Jeleniavo on the same map. Most villages here originated in throughout next 2 decades after the establishment of the town, so in 1770s and 1780s. In this paper, I will focus on the area northwest to the center of the parish. On this map, you've got north as normal, upper side. The only older than Jeleniavo settlement in this area was a village of Szurpiły, that is here, known from the end of the 17th century. The first mentions regarding other villages constitute first baptisms of their inhabitants' children, recorded in Jeleniavo parish. And the chronological order was as following: Gulbieniszki 1772, Udziejek 1773, Kazimierówka 1778, Rudka 1783, Łopuchowo 1788, and here, Sidorówka 1789, Wodziłki, here called Zdroidzisken, that was an alternative name, 1790, and in 1791 the rest, so Szeszubka, Czajewszczyzna and Jegluły. Among the settlers coming to this area, apart from already mentioned Catholics and Jews, there were Lutherans and Old Believers. Lutherans came from the neighboring Eastern Prussia, and their presence is documented since 1786. Next to Jeleniavo, they lived foremost in Rudka, Sidorówka, and Szeszubka. But some families were present in other villages as well. That will be shown in a few minutes. The Lutheran Parish was established only in 1802 and quite far from here, in Chmielówka, already mentioned, a village west to Suvalkų. Until that year, the faithful were dependent on the pastors in not very far eastern Prussia, that is a bit over 20 kilometers, or on the Catholic clergy. The Old Believers are opponents of the reforms taken in the Russian Orthodox Church in the 17th century, who fled to the neighboring countries because of the persecutions, including Poland and Lithuania. After the first partition in 1772, some of them left the territories annexed by Russia and went westwards. In 1780s, so they came for the time of colonization here, they established several settlements in the Grodno economy, including two of those shown here, that is Łopuchowo and Wodziłki. The Old Believers had no priests, and each community had its own elder acting as a spiritual leader. However, neither Catholic, nor Lutheran, nor Old Believers settlements were denominationally homogeneous. And that is what presents this table. In the villages established by the Old Believers, so Łopuchowo and Wodziłki, Catholics were recorded very soon. We've got Roman Catholic baptisms there. Probably they worked there as servants. Furthermore, Łopuchowo, that is an interesting case. It was established by the Old Believers in 1789, although the first Catholic baptism from this place had already been recorded 1 year earlier. And from 1790s onwards, in the same settlement lived also Lutherans, who gradually replaced the Old Believers as a dominant group of inhabitants. Lutherans themselves lived with their Catholic neighbors in the same villages. Moreover, in almost every village, an inn was run by a Jewish family, so we've got mentioned about Jews, apart from the Jewish population of Jeleniavo, already mentioned. Thus, the confessional landscape was highly diverse, as this table brings together. And now I proceed to the crucial sources illuminating the confessional landscape of this area that constitute the metrical books written in Jeleniavo and Chmielówka, so in Jeleniavo Roman Catholic Parish and Chmielówka Lutheran Parish. And we will start with an observation from Chmielówka reports regarding the villages in the vicinity of Jeleniavo. And what we see in this table is the difference in numbers between baptists and deaths. That is quite striking. From many settlements there were no Lutheran baptisms, despite the fact that there must have lived the faithful of this confession, as we know from their death records. As they died, they had to live before. And what is the explanation for this, on the first sight, absurd statistics? That some services they received from a priest of a different denomination. And now we proceed to the cartographic presentation of baptisms recorded in Chmielówka and Jeleniavo. On this map, this light green dots, these are baptisms recorded in Chmielówka Lutheran Parish, and the red ones are baptisms of dissenters, in this case Lutherans, baptized in the Catholic Church in Jeleniavo. Jeleniavo Catholic Church is here, and Chmielówka, center of the Lutheran Parish, is here. In Jeleniavo Catholic Church we can find many Lutheran families among those who christened their children. The first case took place on 8th March 1786. the Jeleniavo vicar Kazimierz Wróblewski baptized Marianna, a daughter of Jakub and Katarina Szpeja, called Lutheranis, from the village of Rudka, that is here. The biggest number of baptisms of Lutheran children marked in the source as dissidentes or Lutheranis came from two settlements, both new settlements, so the aforementioned Rudka, and from Rudka we've got 20 cases of children baptized in the Catholic Church with an annotation that they are Lutheran children, and the second is Sidorówka, 14 cases, and these are mostly cases from 1790s. However, there are some other villages as well. Moreover, something that was officially banned, Lutherans acted as godparents for the children of their Catholic neighbors. As you can see on this map, the scale of this baptisms administered to the centers seem not very high. However, I think that in reality the share of Lutherans in Catholic sacraments had to be much more significant, since the priest was not consistent in indicating the confession. Many persons were once called Lutherans, and in other situations they were not. So they were treated as if they were Catholic. My favorite example is Daniel Mordes from Sidorówka. He was mentioned as a father or godfather in Jeleniavo register 11 times, but only 3 times as a Lutheran. We've got also another interesting consequence of the white Protestants' presence, an exceptional expression noted many times in 1795 and 1796, that the parents and godparents of a child were all Catholics in the source Omnes Catholici. Theoretically, in a Catholic church, it should be obvious that the parents and godparents are Catholics and should need no mention. However, the priest needed to mention that. The long-lasting practice of giving Catholic baptisms to Lutheran children was testified also later by the visitation of the Jeleniavo parish from 1819 and a diocesan report from 1839. Taking distance into account helps much in understanding the behavior of Lutheran parents. The distances and extended travel time on poor condition roads, that is something that also appeared in the previous presentations, it significantly affected everyday life and limited travel possibilities. The Lutherans from the area of Jeleniavo, that is here, had quite a long way to their church in Chmielówka, that is here, or later to Suvalki, and even farther to the nearest Eastern Prussian churches. Here we've got Eastern Prussia border, this yellow line. It was over 20 kilometers to the nearest Prussian churches in Dubeninken, Mirunsken or Sitkemen. It is also almost 20 kilometers to Chmielówka. For example, a shorter distance from Jeleniavo to Suvalki, that is 13 kilometers, we know that it took 3 hours in summer and 2 hours in winter. This means that the faithful from the Jeleniavo area needed more than 6 hours to get to their clergyman in Chmielówka and back, not counting the time spent there. And going back to this map, therefore it is not surprising that the contacts between Reverend Andrzej Grabowski, who served in Chmielówka, and his flock were irregular. The disturbed chronology of death records shows that the priest was informed about such events once upon a time, sometimes even months after somebody had passed away, so something similar that we already heard about Triennae parish in the 17th century. Few funerals took place without any involvement of the clergy in most cases. In the local graveyard that existed in almost every village, the priest only had to be informed. However, a funeral is not a sacrament and can be held without a priest. On the contrary, baptism is considered a sacrament by most Christian denominations, thus requires presence of a clergyman, except some special cases. Moreover, it had to be done very quickly after birth because of high infant mortality. So, when a Lutheran minister was far away, and if he was in Chmielówka, it was common for inhabitants of villages here, the faithful went to the nearest clergyman, that is a Catholic priest in Jeleniavo. It is worth noticing, that is what is visible on this map, that the majority of baptisms recorded in Chmielówka Lutheran Parish concerned the children from exactly this village on those in the vicinity, like Taciewo, for example. That was because of the proximity of the church, and it does not mean that the majority of the parishioners lived here. There were many Lutherans also in this area, as we know from other sources. Another aspect of confessional coexistence was a common practice of burying the dead in local village graveyards, called in Polish language sources mogiłki. The authorities of the Catholic Church wanted to concentrate all the deceased in parish cemeteries. However, implementation of this regulation took decades. Many people buried in village graveyards were not recorded in the metrical books. In the area of Jeleniavo, the first mention about such graveyards comes from 1811, and in 1819, a diocesan inspector stated that Lutherans buried their dead in each village they inhabited. In both reports, we've got the same mixed Catholic Lutheran settlements mentioned, that is Łopuchowo and Sidorówka. So, therefore, it is highly probable that these were the same burial places. So, I think that Catholic and Protestant neighbors used the same village graveyards, and only later on, Catholics were gradually forced by the church officials to bury their dead in parish cemeteries, and the village graveyards started to be used by Lutherans only. And although not used anymore, these places still exist and are known now as Evangelical Cemeteries, and here we've got one of those mentioned in the previous sentences, so the cemetery in Łopuchowo. Some of these cemeteries, after years of neglect, have been recently cleaned out, fortunately. So, to sum up, to conclude with the map of religious topography of Jeleniavo area, with the situation around 1820, with Jeleniavo Catholic and Jewish center, with Wodziłki, Old Believers settlements, and some village graveyards shared by Catholics and Lutherans. In my opinion, the practices described above are, however, not a sign of religious indifferentism. On the contrary, I would argue that people were well aware of their confession. Probably in many cases it was noted in the metrical books exactly because people told the priest what their faith was. Attending the service of a different denomination was only a matter of practical choice. It can be called the pragmatism of everyday life, such as analyzed by David Frick regarding 17th century Vilnius, or Benjamin Kaplan regarding early modern Western Europe. The confessional boundaries at the turn of the 18th century were not as strict as the church or state officials wanted, and not as clear as some simplified narratives claim. The choices of ordinary people could not be subordinated to the requirements of the official religion. Therefore, I would argue that attending the service of another denomination, marrying dissenters, I did not speak much about mixed marriages, but certainly they happened. Or asking the centers to be godparents were common practices of Christians in multi-confessional parts of Europe, such as the Suvalkų region. I've got also another examples from other regions, so that was quite common, but typical also for this multi-confessional region. So I end with pictures of some places that are testimony of this multi-confessionality. So here you've got Roman Catholic Church in Jeleniavo, remains of the Jewish cemetery, also in this settlement, Łopuchowo village graveyard, Evangelical Cemetery, and the Church of the Old Believers in Wodził. Thank you very much, Ačiū labai, danke.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. Dėkui už prezentaciją. And now it's time for questions. Dabar laikas klausimams. Ar yra klausančių? Is there anyone who has questions? You still have time to think. Then I will ask, can you tell us more about your archival research, how you collected the sources, where you look for them, like your archival part of the work? Aš norėjau paklausti apie jo kaip jisai rašė visą tai, kokia jo archyvinė patirtis būtent tyrinėjant šią temą.
When I started to investigate this topic, I tried to collect all the sources that I can find regarding these few villages that I chose in my case study, and I really made quite big journeys to find them in archives in Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, and Germany. However, when I was finishing it, I realized that of highest importance are only two kinds of sources that enable to see the confessional relation in their special dimensions. So first, metrical books, and in my case, these are books from the Lutheran Parish of Chmielówka that are preserved in Suvalkų State Archives, and Jeleniavo Catholic Church, that the original records burned during the Second World War. However, fortunately, a Swedish linguist, Knut Olof Falk, in 1930s made photocopies of them, and they are available now in the Suvalkų District Museum. And by the way, I highly recommend you to make use of these documents because they are quite not well known, and there are plenty of documents that were lost during the Second World War, but we've got their copies in Suvalkų. And the second most important kind of source, that is cartography. And here we've got, I've shown you two maps that are really precious. So the map of the Grodno economy from 1781, but unfortunately it covers only part of the Suvalkų region, and the best depiction of the area until 20th century, so the Prussian topographical survey that was made exactly after the third partition from 1795 till 1800. And these maps are preserved in Berlin State Library.
Taip, aš išversiu. Tai jisai sakė, kad pradžioje iš tiesų bandė surinkti visus įmanomus šaltinius, kurie susijęs su šia vietove. Jisai buvo ir Lenkijos, ir Lietuvos, ir Baltarusijos, ir Vokietijos archyvose. Tačiau iš tiesų vėliau suprato, kad svarbios yra tik dvi šaltinių rūšis, norint būtent analizuoti, tyrinėti konfesinius santykius. Tai pirmasis svarbiausias šaltinis yra metrikų knygos ir jisai jas rado Suvalkų valstybinėme archyve, taip pat Jeleniavo katalikų bažnyčioje. Bet ką jis pažymėjo, kad dauguma dokumentų buvo sunaikinti Antro pasaulinio karo metu, bet Suvalkų regionų muziejuje yra išlikę kopijos, kurios buvo padarytos fotokopijos 1930 metų kumeitis fotokopijos.
Not all of Falk. A Swedish linguist who investigated the heteronymy of
Suvalkų. Švedų lingvistas būtent turėjo tas fotokopijos, kurias galima šiandien pažiūrėti, kas iš tikrųjų yra prarasta, bet būtent tos fotokopijose yra išsaugota ta informacija. Na ir antras šaltinis tai yra kartografija šalia metrikų knygų, kuris buvo svarbus, norint suprasti regioną, jį vizualizuoti. Ir čia jis minėjo tiek Grodno žemėlapį, tiek ir prūsų topografiją, prūsų kartografiją, kurią galima rasti Berlyno valstybinėme archyve. Bibliotekoje. Now, maybe there is a question in the audience. Gal turite klausimų? Turit, gerai.
Aš galbūt ne klausimas, o papildymas, kadangi čia jūs minėjot Milovką ir prieš tai pranešėjas minėjo, tai aš norėčiau tik tai papildyti, kad būtent kunigas iš Milovkos, Grabovski, jis iš tikrųjų aptarnavo, kažkiek tai patarnavo ir čia Marijampolėje, ir Kalvarijoje, ir į jį buvo kreiptasi Vištyčio parapiečių, prašant pagalbos, ir netgi jis vyko į Garliavą, kur buvo kuriama parapija. Taip, kad tie atstumai tarp Milovkos ir Jeleniavo, tai yra niekas palyginus nuo Milovkos iki Garliavos.
So I will translate. He spoke about the priest Grabowski, and he said that from Chmielówka, and he said that he was also traveling, serving in Marijampolė, in Kalvarija, and in Vištytis parish, and also he was in Garliava at the moment when they were establishing this religious community. And he said that there is, if we speak in this way, the distance between Jeleniavo and Chmielówka was not that big if you speak about distance. So it was like a supplementary comment. So maybe if you want, you can react to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Certainly there were many farther places. However, in these first years of recording in Chmielówka, I think there were no records from as far places. Maybe later, I think. But I'm not sure. But thank you very much for this comment. That's useful.
Padėkoju. Sakė, jis tyrinėjo, jis nebuvo radęs įrašų iš tolimesnių vietų, bet tik tuo laikotarpiu, kuriuo jis tyrinėjo.
Ich habe eine Ergänzung.
Ja.
Darf ich das auf Deutsch sagen?
Ja,
Pastor Grabowski war der erste Pastor in der Gegend und das für etwa 30 Jahre gemeinsam mit seinem Sohn. Er begann 1793 in Sudawski und wurde dann 1802 nach Chmielówka berufen, also nach etwa 10 Jahren, und hat dort in Chmielówka dann gelebt und die Kirchengeschäfte betreut. Und zwar nicht nur Chmielówka und die Gegend, die wir gerade dort gesehen haben, sondern er war in der Tat unterwegs bis nach Wischkitten, bis nach Virbalis, bis nach Wilkowiczki bis nach Kalvaria. Also ein riesiges Gebiet für eine einzige Person. Und das ist auch der Grund, warum natürlich nur so wenige Aufzeichnungen in den Unterlagen sich befinden in dieser Zeit. Nach dem Tod von Grabowski hat dann sein Sohn das übernommen, 1826, in gleicher Funktion. 1838 ist dann der Pfarrsitz von Chmielowka nach Suvalkijos verlegt worden und erst in den 40er Jahren, Anfang der 40er Jahre, wurden in den anderen Ortschaften Pfarrer eingesetzt, insbesondere in der Wallis als erstes.
Mir kann man sich nicht merken zum Übersetzen.
Ja, sorry.
Das müssen Sie mir geben. Jis pasakė, kad šis kunigas Grabowskis pirmas su jo sūnumi, jie buvo pirmieji kunigai čia šitai aplinkoje ir pirmą jis buvo šitam kaime, apie kurį jis buvo jau kalbėjama ir po to 1802 metais jis buvo perkeltas į Chmieliovską ir nuo Chmieliovsko jis aptarnavo ir į tokias vietovės kaip Vištyčios, netgi Virbalios, netgi Vilkaviškų, žodžiu, labai daug visokio miestelio šitame regione ir dėl to nėra nuostabu, kad yra labai mažai duomenų, kadangi kur jis galėjo tik patekti per metus, žodžiu, kelias labai ilgas. Ir jis tarnavo iki 1826 metais, po to jo sūnus perėjo tą jo darbą. Was hatten Sie über die 1840er gesagt? Das war jetzt schon nicht mehr gelesen.
Ja, erst in den 1840er Jahren neue Pastoren eingesetzt.
Ja, danke. Tik 1840 metais atėjo nauji kunigai ir daugiau kunigai, kurie galėjo aptarnauti tą teritoriją.
Ar neplanuojate savo tyrinėjimų šią temą tęsti šiame regione?
Maybe you have plans to make this kind of research in this region.
Thank you very much for invitation, as I understand it. I would really like, but right now I've got other duties, but I hope in the future to make some further research. And I'd also, by the way, I think that's very important, and that is something I did not implement as much as I would like. I mean, to join the perspectives of Polish and Lithuanian sides of the region. That is something that I think is would be a valuable improvement for both sides. So I hope to widen my perspectives in the future.
Taip, tai jis sakė, kad kol kas jis turi labai daug darbo, ar gal ateity, bet jis pripažįsta, kad būtų labai naudinga tyrinėjantį temą įtraukti tiek lenkiškas, tiek lietuviškas istoriografijos perspektyvas ir tokiu būdu patobulinti savo projektą. So I translate. So if we have no questions, I see no questions. So we do now this longer break, and then afterwards we have these two presentations, but it will be short at the longer break. So I would say, let's meet 10 after, so we'll have 17 minutes break, 17 minutes for coffee, will we manage? 17 minučių užteks, tada susitinkam 10 po 10 minutes.